Hey, running out of time, what's up? I'm literally 2 hours late of reviewing these 5 albums. You know, originally I scheduled to review this before I had dinner, but I just, yeah, well, whatever. Anyway, it's gonna be the first mini albums review, or mini album reviews, of 2019. I'm gonna be reviewing 5 albums released this year, and I'm gonna be telling you my thoughts and my opinions, and it will be cool. Let's start off with Futures, with Future Hndrxxx presents The Wizrd. And, yeah, Future, why wouldn't you know him? He's been a very, very, very popular musical artist. A lot of the pop artists are featuring him in their songs, and he's also making a lot of rap songs himself as well. Most notably, Mask Off, which is a song that I surprisingly like, even though I'm not a huge fan of trap rap, especially for mumble trap rap. But yeah, Future is basically this mumble trap rap hit-making machine, and he churns out a lot of the tracks with the same strict formula. And for a lot of his albums, they are mostly misses than hits, and they are mostly kind of generic. But on this album, I like that he's kind of turning it up a notch a little bit and making it a little more cutting edge and a little more flashy and futuristic. Because he's Future. Get it? Pun unintended, I swear. The album starts off with Never Stop, which isn't a strong album opening at all. I feel like it's very stale. It's pretty generic. I do kind of like the glamorous instrumentals and the occasional flow changes. They're kind of quirky, kind of fun, but that's pretty much it. Other than that, it still sounds like a generic, average trap rap song. And Jumping on a Jet is almost as equally as forgettable and generic as the first one, except it's a little more aggressive. It hits a little more hard. I kind of don't know why he put this one as one of the singles. The track Rocket Ship, though, is a bit of an improvement. It has sort of a similar vibe as Jumping on a Jet, but it's actually more eerie, and the vibe and the flow is way more smooth. And I also love it when Future plays around with his vocals a lot, especially with the ad-libs and the flow, and he actually does that a lot on the rest of the album. We have the track Temptation, which isn't great, but I still appreciate it for what it is. I really like the nice vocal harmonies, and the track has this nice, quirky, dreamy quality to it. And I also kind of appreciate the lyrics where Future actually opened up about his temptations. And yeah. My favorite track on the album, however, is Crushed Up. Yeah, it's actually the catchiest song off of the entire record. I kind of like the steady beat, but the real reason why I love this track a lot is because of how euphoric and dreamy and psychedelic the track feels. And I also really like the swirling arpeggios and the distant reed sounds. It's such a hypnotizing track, and the chorus and the hook, they are pretty catchy. Diamonds crushed up on the face, I could see it. And then we have FNN, which sounds way more cold-blooded and stiff, but actually still kind of energetic and entertaining. And, lyrically, it's not all that great. This album lyrically is not all that great anyways. Come on, guys, it's a mumble trap rap album. But I kind of like how Future describes these FNN, and one of the lines being FN bullets go through doors. I don't know why, but that one just sticks out, and I am actually surprised at the heavy and aggressive beat switch at the second half of the track. And we also have a Call the Coroner, and the instrumentals are actually really tasteful and nocturnal, and the keyboards are very dreamy and psychedelic, and there is almost a sinister vibe towards the track that I really like. And we have Talk Shit Like a Preacher, and this is one of the most tense but at the same time bouncy tracks on the entire record. I actually really love this track. My second favorite, actually. It's really fun, it's catchy, but at the same time, it feels cutting edge. And, yeah, I just really love the production on this thing as well. And the next track is actually not that bad as well. Promise you that. It is titled, it's more slow, it's more emotional, and yeah, even though flow-wise, Future's flow isn't all that amazing, he's still using that same formula over his rap sung performance, but the vocals there are pretty nice, pretty quirky. And then we have Stick to the Models, not one of the brighter and more interesting tracks off of the entire album. Yeah, it's just generic. Without the fun and quirky vocal plays, without the flashy and futuristic instrumentals, without the bouncy and hard-hitting and boosted beats and punchy percussions, there's nothing on here, man. Other than the instrumentals being kind of tasteful, I guess, but still, sounds pretty generic, redundant, and stale. Over to the next page of my script. Overdose is even more repetitive and stiff, however, and it also feels kind of clunky and obnoxious, but it's a good thing that it only runs at about 1 minute and 55 seconds. One thing about this track, though, that kind of stood out to me is that Future on this track kind of laughs at himself at some times, which I think is pretty weird, but also, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it. The next track, Crazy But True, is actually another highlight on the album. The flow is very nice, the hook is breathy, it's kind of catchy as well, and, yeah, the hooks are very layered, and this song also has an emotional edge to it. The track Servant Killa Cam, the keyboards feel pretty epic at first, but other than that, I guess the track is not all that special to me. I do like how the beat feels industrial and kind of choppy as well. The track Baptiize, however, is another highlight of the album. The beat switch. Man, the beat switch. Future is really getting hard on the rap game. And yeah, the track is catchy, but also very smooth. And yeah, I guess another track that I like on the album is Faceshot. It's really amped and pumped. The synths are grimy, the beat is banger, and it's such a flashy and cutting-edge track. And other than that, the track Unicorn Perp sounds pretty good if it weren't for that drab-ass Gunna verse. Gunna has to pop into the track and ruin it. Young Thug. His performance is actually pretty great right here. His ad-libs are actually okay, tolerable. The beat is pretty nice. The track Going Dummy, I kind of like the wintry synths, which are kind of layering on one another, but other than that, there's not much that's standing out. The vocal melodies are pretty cute, though. And the track First Off is another generic, stale, average, by the numbers, you know, mumble trap rap track. rap. And Travis Scott is featured, but actually, this track feels more Travis Scott than an actual Future track, so there's that. Ain't Coming Back feels dull, generic, and forgettable, and the last track, Tricks on Me, it has a weird flow. It sounds like a crappy ballad, and a sad attempt from Future trying to make like a conclusive, emotional, beautiful album ending. One of the lines being, I'm Future Hndrxxx, but I don't know how to play the guitars. But other than that, I still appreciate Future for making a mumble trap rap album that actually has entertaining production. And even though it's still kind of generic, kind of stale at times, it's more special than the other contemporaries like Migos. So yeah, kind of feeling a 7 to a 6, strong 6 out of 10. And then we'll move on to the second album, James Blake with Assume Form. Ever since January of 2018, I have been expecting a James Blake studio album. I've been anticipating it because I've been just so excited for this new studio album. But apparently there's this huge change in his style, and that is, you know, his music is going to sound way more sweet and poppy and mainstream on this album, which is actually kind of concerning at first. But now that I've heard this album, I'm really, really glad. So James Blake didn't put out studio albums and solo projects for a while now. He had been working with Beyonce on Lemonade. He had worked a lot on the Black Panther soundtrack, and he had worked here and there on, you know, different projects and stuff. And then we have Assume Form. The title track is my least favorite here, even though the opening is pretty sweet, pretty cloudy and moody as well, which is actually not that bad. I kind of like the plunging pianos. They are ambient, and they're moody, but other than that, this track feels kind of messy, kind of redundant. It's like James Blake is trying to merge two songs together, but it kind of failed because it just feels so out of place and unnatural. The second track is titled Mile High, featuring Travis Scott and Metro Boomin. I don't really like this track either. I mean, at first it feels kind of good. I am kind of surprised at how smooth and functional the mix between trap rap and art pop and electronic music is. They go together really well, really smoothly, but other than that, it's still a pretty boring, spacey, airy trap rap tracks with some dime a dozen performances from Travis Scott. The beat is just okay. I don't like how the track just fades in at the beginning. It's just such a turnoff. However, the third track, Tell Them, I surprisingly like it. Instead of having Travis Scott on the track, we have Moses Sumney and, again, Metro Boomin. Metro Boomin's beat here is way more entertaining. It's way more busier and bustlier. And Moses Sumney's vocal performance is really captivating. And I like how James Blake sort of distorted and manipulated his vocals to push his vocals higher. And I like how mystical it sounds. And it's still very catchy. The bass is very deep. And it's like James Blake trying to do trap rap, but he's being more experimental and weird. That's one thing I like. The track Into the Red, and from that track on is where all the art pop ballads come in. They are the strong suits of James Blake. It's awesome. The track Into the Red is a gorgeous ballad. At first we get James Blake's vocals. They are beautiful, they are gorgeous, backed by these amazing, beautiful strings. But then at one point in the track, the tone kind of switches, and James Blake sings in this robotic auto-tune vocals that are on the high pass effect. And it's a really nice, moody, and emotional ballad. Barefoot in the Park features popular Spanish pop artist Rosalía, who made it into my top 10 albums of the year list. And damn, this track is awesome. The styles between James Blake and Rosalía flows together really, really well. Rosalía's performance, her vocals are, as always, angelic. The duet is gorgeous, it's emotional, and the instrumentals are very nocturnal as well. Yeah, it's awesome. And I like how Spanish and English, you know, sort of switches and swaps around. The track Can't Believe the Way We Flow. I can't believe the way we flow is also amazing. Robin Pecknold of Fleet Foxes, one of my favorite folk bands of all times, also commented on this track on his Instagram story, saying that this track is awesome. And well, he didn't actually say that. He said that he can't stop replaying this track because this track is beautiful. It's very dreamy, very hypnotic, kaleidoscopic, very relaxing. The vocals are really, really well layered together, and it's just so smooth. The production of this thing is beautiful. We have the track Are You in Love, which is almost like Into the Red, but I guess a little more minimalistic. It doesn't feel too lovely, I guess, is my biggest gripe of the track. And however, I kind of like the nice splashes of keyboards, but They are kind of ruined by the very dry and rough hi-hats. Anyway, the next track, Where's the Catch, is actually my favorite track on the album. Yeah. It features Andre 3000, one half of famed rap duo Outkast, and damn, I just kept thinking and thinking and thinking about it, and this track is my favorite. It's dark, it's bitter, shadowy, grim. The pianos in the beginning, they are bitter, and James Blake's vocals, they are beautiful as always, and I like how he plays with his vocals a lot, you know, making different sound effects and by using his mouth. And then Andre 3000 kills it once again. Yeah, this track just bleeds charisma. And then after that, to complement the bitterness, we have two very, very warm, lovely, welcoming art pop tracks. We have I'll Come To and Power On. I'll Come To is very sweet, very gentle. I really like the gentle taps and pinches of beats and percussions. And even though the lyrics are pretty simple, pretty straightforward, it's still very, very sweet and unescapable. And meanwhile, Power On is sonically similar to I'll Come To. The lyrics are pretty simple, and it's just so freaking catchy. I love it. And then the penultimate track is Don't Miss It, which is the single for the album, the first single being released. It's very depressing and beautiful at the same time. Similar to that, If the Car Beside You Moves Ahead track, which is my second favorite track off of 2018. It's isolating, it's alienating, and it's actually really alienating because James Blake really did this, you know, like 40s, 50s black and white movies about aliens sound kind of thing. And the pianos are very watery. I love it. And he also kind of chopped up his vocals a lot in the track. Sometimes he speed them up. Sometimes he does weird effects to them. And it's really creative and smart, and I love it. Very beautiful. And the album ending is called Lullaby for My Insomniac. And it's very beautiful and dreamy, even though it feels kind of hollow, kind of vague, kind of airy, but it's still very pleasant to the ears. I like how layered it is, and the atmosphere that it creates is awesome. And yeah, James Blake, his last album didn't really work out for me, but this one is awesome. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. My favorite track here is Where's the Catch, and least favorite is the title track. And I also forgot to say that my favorite track on that latest Future album is Crushed Up, and my least favorite is Overdose. And now let's move on to the third album. I'm running out of time, oh my gosh. Marquis Hill, Modern Flows, Part 2. My flow is rooted, my flow is modern, Modern Flows, Volume 2. And yeah, Marquis Hill is a trumpet player, a jazz musician, a band leader, composer from Chicago. And we have a jazz, modal jazz, jazz rap, fusion mix album right here. That's actually released earlier on in 2018, November. And I'm going to be reviewing it because it's awesome. The intro track is pretty nice. Yeah, the rapping is kind of socially conscious, and it's a really nice tone setter, and it kind of has this groove very subtly hidden behind the rap verses that later on grows and becomes a full-fledged jazz track. That is the next track, Twin Flame, or Twin Flames, is there an S? I forgot. But yeah, I love this track. It's dizzying, it's wondrous, very colorful, sometimes cute, but also very fun and entertaining. I love myself some entertaining and accelerating and exhilarating jazz tracks. The last time I heard jazz tracks like this, it's Sons of Kemet. And this one is a jazz banger as well. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. We have Ego versus Spirit, which is, as I recall, 8 minutes long, which is pretty crazy. Or was it 6 minutes long? But Either way, it's huge. It's a huge jazz track with some exotic bass grooves and some really intense solo passages. But at the end, it sort of resolves itself and becomes something very beautiful. And I also really like the spoken word passages towards the end. Ego be like, blah, 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 blah. Spirit be like, blah, 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 blah. It's like they're actually weighing the differences between ego and the spirit. And then we also have The Watcher, which is a very, another solid jazz track, first of all, and I love it. It's very dynamic, it's full of different segments, and they flow into each other really well, really smoothly. It's kind of dragged, and it's kind of odd and quirky at times, but that gives the track a lot of flavor. And other than that, we have It Takes a Village, a jazz rap track with some really nice socially conscious lyrics. And this track actually has the same groove as the previous track, but it sort of turns into a jazz rap track, and it's a really nice touch of genre transitioning. And we also have another jazz rap track called A Prayer for the People, and it's more low key, it's more meditative, but it's awesome. It's really well performed. It's cohesive. We have a spoken word passage on gentrification, and the grooves, they are beautiful, and the trumpets are magnificent as well. And another highlight of the album is Moment of Flow. And the Moment of Flow has a very unique groove, and we also get these grindy bass in the beginning, which are pretty rough, and they are a really nice touch. In the middle of the track, they work in some polyrhythms, which are really, really orgasmic. Also, orgasmic would be the Law of Vibrations, I guess. Less orgasmic, I have to admit, but it's still a pretty nice, punchy track that sort of leads to the album ending. And the rest of the tracks on the album are not as spectacular, though. They are kind of like, slow, smooth jazz, but they are really airy, kind of spacey. Especially for the track Kiss and Tell. I don't like that track slightly. The duet feels kind of out of place on that track. But other than that, I still enjoy this album a lot. I'm feeling an 8 out of 10 on this track. My favorite here is Twin Flame, and my least favorite is Kiss and Tell. Wow, I'm screwed. Fourth album, Sharon Van Etten with Remind Me Tomorrow. So Sharon Van Etten is a singer-songwriter from the USA. Let's go! The album starts off with I Told You Everything, which is actually a very underwhelming and disappointing album opener. It's so wallpaper, it's so stagnant, it's so sparse, slow, and uneventful, and forgettable. And I don't like it when singer-songwriters make these kind of songs, like these, very spacey piano songs that almost sounds like spoken word. The lyrics on this track, they aren't all that interesting as well. I told you everything, and you were like, holy shit. And the next track is titled No One's Easy to Love. This track tries to be more aggressive with the rock music influences, but I don't really care for this track either. I guess another track that I'm not a huge fan of would be Malibu, which feels very stale, pretty stiff. The pianos are pretty vague. She tried to throw in some synths, some quirky synths, but that's not really helping the track at all. Yeah, it's just this, piano ballad that tries to be emotional, and I don't like that. I like it when it's more instrumentally dense and uplifting. Well, we have Comeback Kid, which is my favorite track here. We have these bold organ passages, these bombastic booming drums, the guitars, they are very uplifting and exciting. The lyrics are dramatic, and it's such a catchy track. Come back, kid. Another track would be Jupiter 4, which is another single released prior to the album. I kind of like the ghostly melodies, the cycling synths, and it's a pretty colorful and compelling track, even though it doesn't hit as hard. It's still really beautiful and instrumentally dense, sounds pretty interesting, and nice musicianship. The track 17 is my second favorite track here. Sharon Van Etten kind of channels her inner Bruce Springsteen here because this track has a lot of country influences on it. I can feel it. The vocals are actually really, really, really well performed. They have a lot of swagger to them. And another track that I like is You Shadow. Lyrically speaking, it feels like she's yelling at someone. I don't know who. But musically speaking, I like the clunky, unique grooves, the reverb cymbals, the distorted Sunbird guitars. And even though it's an angry track, it still sounds pretty catchy and positive and uplifting for some reason. The track Hands is, wow, it's awesome, explosive, very climactic, and it's a heartwarming song and beautiful song at the same time as well. The mix is very dense and thick. And yeah, other two tracks that I don't really care for all that much would be the album ending Stay, which is an airy piano song that I don't really care for. We have these splashes of guitars, but that's it. And yeah, and track Memorial Day, which is a track that I really want to talk about because I really like the not the vocals, the instrumentals of this track. They are really eerie and moody and strange, actually. It almost feels like I'm slowly going inside a very dim and dark cave with the ghoulish and ghostly, moody reed, instrumentals. But the vocals, they are dense, but they're really forgettable. They are really airy and spacey and eh. So, yeah. It's a strong and cohesive album, despite a few stagnant and stiff and wallpaper bland tracks. I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. My favorite here is Comeback Kid, and my least favorite, the album opener. Moving on to the 5th album. Surprisingly, Weezer with their self-titled album, the bracket Teal album. Yes, it's another Weezer self-titled album. We have the Blue album, their first album, awesome album. We have Red, we have Green, we have and then we have Teal. We have the White album actually, like 3 years ago, and they will be dropping Black album very soon. Yeah. Anyway, this is the Teal album. It's a surprise album drop, and this album is full of covers. And that's pretty interesting. I'm running out of time. Alright, anyway, last year they had released their cover of Toto's Africa because of popular demand. And I thought it was okay, even though it sounds almost like it's original. It's almost like a karaoke version, but they would add in the Weezerisms, the stale, bare vocals, the raw and youthful guitars, and yeah, the cover is actually pretty colorful and nice. It's okay. It's not terrible, but it's not like great or anything. It's not like revolutionary or anything. And then, well, that's basically the album opener of the album. And the second track is the cover of Everybody Wants to Rule the World by Tears for Fears. And I actually really, really, really enjoyed the cover of this track. I think Weezer killed it. It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, the vocals, they are actually explosive. And this cover is full of energy. And I like how they put their own indie rock spin on this track. And Sweet Dreams by Hndrxxx is the third track. Sweet Dreams are made of this. Yeah, it's another pretty good cover. It's not great or anything, but it's actually pretty good, pretty satisfying. I like the quirky synths and keys that they added on this track, and the vocal harmonies, they are actually pretty satisfying. Yeah, it's weird that I'm reviewing a cover album, but I can't comment on like the melodies and the lyrics, because these are covers, but here we go. Yeah, they also covered a-ha's Take On Me, which is one of my favorite songs in the 80s. Hands down. Take on me, take on me. And their performance here is energetic, blissful. The synths are really nice, and it sounds very youthful and sweet, surprisingly. And I also like that Weezer is giving this track their own unique spin. And we also have Turtles with Happy Together, which is also a very fun and blissful cover. They didn't try to put too much onto this track, and maybe that's one of the reasons why this cover track, worked out so much well for them. And yeah, the hook is pretty layered, the guitars are explosive, and the performance is passionate, and I like it. And the rest of the album isn't all that spectacular, though. They actually covered Paranoid by Black Sabbath. Yeah, it's like they're trying to do heavy metal here, but it didn't really work out that well. It almost sounds like they're doing a really, really bad Ozzy Osbourne impression, and meh. Yeah, even though it still sounds pretty interesting and intriguing, and the drums are pretty heavy, and the guitars are pretty heavy as well, it's still just not that good. We also have Electric Light Orchestra with Mr. Blue Sky. The original is very quirky and fun and uplifting and bouncy and lighthearted, but their rendition is pretty stale, pretty stiff, kinda counter-intuitive, counter-musical. What's that sound? I have no idea. But yeah, this cover track is kind of plain, pretty average, pretty stiff. The vocal transitions, they're pretty awkward. Surprisingly, they covered TLC's No Scrubs. And even though before listening to the track, we all thought that it would suck ass, but no, this is one of the best tracks off of the cover album. It actually sounds pretty funny in a good way. And the vocals, they are actually pretty swaggy and sassy. And the building vocals and the walls of guitars are really nice. And it's very playable. And however, they end off the cover album with two bad covers of Billie Jean by Michael Jackson and Stand By Me by Ben E. King. The former of the two is not that good. Yeah, you know, they tried to, you know, follow Michael Jackson vocal by vocal snippet, and they tried to do Michael Jackson's ad-libs, and it's cringy. It's hilarious. Yeah, they really, really did the hee-hees in the track, and it's cringy. And, yeah, it doesn't have the rawness of the original as well. It sounds pretty dumb. And the cover track, Stand By Me, is, the guitars are kind of overboard on this track. And, they're trying to turn this track into a more, you know, indie pop, you know, version track, but, they're kind of smothering the original. They're kind of ruining it. And, but yeah, still, not a terrible album. Actually, not a terrible album. Actually, better than some of their solo albums, like Pacific Daydream or Raditude. Feeling a 6 out of 10. Favorite cover here? Everybody Wants to Rule the World. And my least favorite is, Stand By Me. So, have you listened to these 5 albums from 1 to 10? How much would you rate them? Like if you like them, hate if you hate them, and subscribe if you want more. I got to leave now. Fuck.